tab, grab a seat, and pour a pint. It's time for the Beer Guys Radio Show.
You want free beer? Go to the brewery.
Dedicated to the art, science, and enjoyment of craft beer.
Yo, what's wrong with the beer we got?
Now, here are your hosts, Tim Dennis and Brian Hewitt.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Beer Guys Radio Show. We're broadcasting from the Beer Guys Radio Studios in Marietta, Georgia. And this week we're talking with Indiana's Upland Brewing Company. We'll discuss the challenges of brewing both clean and sour beers, talk about juicy and hazy IPAs, sensory tasting panels, the growing popularity of kombucha, and Upland's newest tap house. I'm Tim Dennis, and with me as always is my good friend and co-host, Brian Hewitt.
What's up, Tim? Joining us today, we have Adam Covey, the quality manager for Upland Brewing, Matt Wisley, the brewer and innovation lead, and Eli Trinkle, the sours brewer for Upland Brewing. Guys, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So, Adam, did you guys get into anything interesting this week?
Well, we've been pretty busy. We've had some brewers out at a couple different festivals. Matt was out in Chico hanging out with Sierra Nevada. We had some guys up in Michigan and some over in Rheingeist and over in Cincinnati. So been pretty busy there. As far as around the brewery goes, we've been hard at work packaging up some of our Teddy Bear Kisses variants, which is our Russian Imperial Stout we release once a year. So we got all kinds of fun versions of that going that we've been putting into some kegs. We're gearing up for our annual Coolship brew in the sours facility. So we've actually going to be doing that this Friday. So that's going to be fun. We some of the brewers actually hang out at the brewery and spend the night with the beer as it inoculates. Always busy in this place.
So a brewing sleepover, basically.
Yeah,
huh?
right.
That sounds like a decent party. Count me in for some of that, for sure.
Yeah, sure. How about you, Tim?
Good week, Brian. So we did a little more adventuring last weekend, keeping up with our goal to visit all the breweries in the state of Georgia in 2018. Indeed. We got one more this weekend. It was one of those that's just kind of out by itself, not a whole lot else around there. But we hit Rome City Brewing in Rome, Georgia, and that was number 68 on the Georgia Brewery. And I think we've got like 14 left now, Brian.
Oh, we at 14.
So
okay.
Depending on who opens up on us, I think we've cut the, what do we say, November 1st? If you have to be open by November 1st to make the list.
I think to make it even feasible for us to do this, knowing where some breweries might be opening, I think November 1st might
have a New Year's Eve opening. We got to run across the state there. So, but it's been a fun adventure, man. We're checking out some cool stuff and something really cool. We went to Yorkville, Georgia, and we visited Yorkville Hops and Produce. There's actually a hop farm in Georgia. And this was his first year. He had 144 plants. If I remember correctly, there was Centennial, Chinook, and Zeus, Brian. Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
That sounds right.
Chinook and Zeus. Yeah, either that or Cascade and Zeus.
Yeah.
But Zeus for sure.
Zeus for sure. Centennial for sure. Because we talked about how difficult those are to grow in Georgia.
Indeed.
And he said he's going to add several more plants next year and continue to grow the hopper. And when we talked about how difficult Centennial is to grow in Georgia, he said he loves to prove people wrong.
I was impressed by how many hops were on those vines. I mean, there was a little late in the season for him now for his plants. Some of them were a little on the old side, but there were a lot on there for the
time
plants.
Of the season, first year plants. They really and being the country boys that we are, we got some veggies straight from the garden.
Yeah,
just sliced up some cucumbers right out of the garden. Had a good time there.
What was the thing that
kohlrabi?
Yes,
I hadn't had that before. What else did you get into this week, Brian?
So I got into a little bit of an old beer. I dug it out of the closet, the cellar, a Coco Mole, probably from 2015. And it was a beer I used to love a lot back in the day. And it held up surprisingly well. I was shocked. Got some of the Dank Tank fresh sticky nugs from Sweetwater that just came out. Got into that. I had to get into that. I made a stop over to get some Athena Paradiso, passion fruit and guava. I happened to see that was pouring in my neighborhood, so I had to make a point to get over there.
A lot of people in Canada got into fresh sticky nugs this week.
Yes, they did.
So, yeah, absolutely. I also opened a Monday night Last Will and Testament, which is a barrel-aged old ale. That was phenomenal. Just deep and rich flavors. It's got that. I don't like using the word old for the taste of a beer because that's not a good connotation. What's a good descriptor there, Brian, for something that just has kind of a Vintage rustic. I know we'd had the description once before. It tastes like being in an old library in the best way possible. And that's kind of the way it was.
Drinking port in an old library, that sort of thing.
Yeah, pretty good stuff.
You know, Tim, I think it's time for Truck and Tap's Beers of the Week.
Crack open a cold one. It's the Truck and Tap Beer of the Week. Craft beer and food trucks in downtown Woodstock. Truckandtap.com.
Well, Brian, we've got a good list as always. We had a little pre-gaming. So we're at Ironmonger Brewing. Our studios are in Ironmonger Brewing here in Marietta, and they have a new brewer here, Sarah Green. So they did a meet and greet this week, and we had some of Sarah's news beers. So she kind of reworked several of the recipes that they have. And one of our favorites, Billet, the Blood Orange Pale Ale. Got it. Blood Orange Pilsner. Correct?
Blood Orange Pilsner, yes.
So got into that. Some really good stuff. We had a couple new ones from Creature Comforts. They're Imperial Trop Haze, an Imperial IPA, and something you brought, Brian.
Oh, yes. I've been meaning to bring this for a while.
Yes. So what is it? Decadent Ale Cinnamon Roll IPA.
It's a French Toast IPA.
French Toast
Double
IPA.
IPA.
Okay. Well, admittedly, I thought the French Toast flavor was very cinnamon French toasty, and the IPA was very IPA-y. Yeah. I just didn't like the two hanging together, personally.
You got your French toast and my IPA. You got your IPA and my French toast.
It didn't work out for me. But, of course, we've got several Upland beers to get into. We have Upland Iridescent, which is a blonde sour aged in wine barrels with apricot and ginger. We have Oaken Rosé, which is a wine barrel aged sour blonde with Chambourcin grapes. And we also have a Revive, which is a wine barrel aged sour blonde with notes of pineapple and chamomile. And we have one that's simply called Upland Cherry. Correct, Brian?
Yes.
So that's it, man. That's what we're going to get into this week. Brian, what is happening this week in the news?
What's in the news? The beer guys have the scoop.
Extra, extra, read all about it.
Time for headlines.
All right, let's get started with a little controversy. Tim, how much would you pay for a bottle of beer? A bottle of really good beer.
About $3.50.
About $3.50. That is not going to get you a 12-ounce bottle of KBBS. So Toppling Goliath has stirred up some controversy with their Kentucky Brunch Brand Stout release announcement. Attendees of the release event will have the opportunity to buy a 12-ounce bottle of KBBS for $100, Tim.
That's insane. That's insane.
And that's on top of the ticket price, but the ticket's only $6 to attend. So it's
$6 to attend, $100 for the bottle. That's the price per ounce on that, or PPO, as it's called, is pretty heavy duty.
Yeah, it's about, I think people did the math, and it's about $8.33 an ounce or something like that.
But to answer your original question, I do not believe that I personally would pay $100 for a 12-ounce bottle of beer. So unless there was some experience or
charity
or everything around there, but I don't see myself fighting the masses to get in on that action.
A lot of social media agrees with you. My favorite quote about it, complaining about it, was $100 a bottle, and it's not even hazy.
Not even hazy, man. That's true. So does Upland have any bottles running $100 for 12 ounces?
Hopefully not. Not from our location.
Hopefully not. Yeah. Yeah. One day.
You know what's fun about this is this KBBS wasn't the only thing I came across this week where somebody was releasing a beer of that size for $100. Anchorage Brewing also had a triple barrel-aged barley wine called A Deal with the Devil that was going to be a $375 was going for $100 as well. And they canceled that event due to criticism.
Backlash.
Yes.
Well, you know what? With the KBBS thing, Brian, I saw a lot of people online complaining about it, and I saw a lot of others saying if you don't want yours, I'll line up and get it for you.
Yeah, there's a lot of that too.
That's fine. You know, there's people that wanted. I think it's insane. A lot of people will pay it and enjoy it. Let them enjoy it.
Yeah, I agree. You know, this has been a great year for wacky, newsworthy beer collaborations, and I had to mention this one. So we've had one for the very last Blockbuster in the country. We've had a pumpkin pancake beer for IHOP. We've had Dunkin' Donuts coffee porter, and even a line of Maine beers for LL Bean. But now we have Planters Peanuts collaborating on a peanut-flavored beer. And it's not a stout or a porter like you would expect. It's an IPA called Mr. IPA Nut.
Mr. IPA Nut. Okay.
Say it fast. It makes it funny.
No. That's maybe we could mix it with the French Toast IPA.
Oh, that might be really good.
And then dump them both down the drain together.
Yes. Do you ever put peanut butter on a pancake and maple syrup and all that?
I have, but I have never dunked that in an IPA. Just throwing that out there.
I was like, there's always time to try it.
I guess so.
So this will be released on October 27th at locations around Illinois.
Okay. Good stuff, man. Well, maybe we'll try it if we can get our hands on it. I'd try it, Brian.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I'm not going to stop. I'd try it. Well, you're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We do need to take a quick break, but we'll be back very soon to talk with Upland Brewing Company.
Craft beer forged with a reverence for tradition and new styles that start a revolution. Ironmonger Brewing. The brewers at Ironmonger Brewing pride themselves at being masters of barrel-aged, hoppy, and sour beers. They invite you to their tap room in Marietta, Georgia to taste and see. Also visit their barrel room for an intimate drinking experience with great live entertainment. Keep up to date on all things Ironmonger by liking them on Facebook. Ironmonger Brewing, establishing a new standard in craft beer.
Looking for a great way to promote your business? CedarStream has what you need. For apparel, stickers, signs, and banners, we're your one-stop shop. There are never any art fees or setup fees. And if you need your items quickly, there's no additional charge for rush orders. Whether you own a brewery, bar, bottle shop, or other business, CedarStream is ready to serve you. Visit cedarstream.com for more info or call 800-686-7488 for immediate assistance. CedarStream. We print America.
Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Cannonball coming.
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. If you missed an episode, don't worry. All past future episodes are available as a podcast. Subscribe on your favorite podcasting app and never miss a show. We're talking with Eli, Matt, and Adam from Upland Brewing today.
Gentlemen, thanks again for joining us. We do appreciate it. So, Eli, a question for you, sir. We are sipping on Revive. Can you tell us about this beer?
Yeah, so Revive is whenever we went through the expansion, that was one of our first beers that we actually did a lot of trials on and built that up. So it's pineapple and chamomile, aged on it's about 6 months old, base beer, aged on pineapple and chamomile. And then we just force carb that one and package it up in 500 ml bottles and kegs. And it's one that we really we try to dial back the sourness a little bit on it. We're kind of known for some heavier sour things, and we're just trying to push that to be a little bit more approachable. But you tell me how approachable it is.
Well, that was one of the first things I noticed, actually, is it was not as intense as some of the other ones that I've had. And I like that. I can enjoy a really sour beer, but for something that you want to sit around and sip for a while, I do like kind of the softer, more approachable sourness. The flavors come out really good. I get more of the pineapple, I think, than the chamomile in this one.
That beer will change quite a bit with age as well. So the pineapple will start coming through more as it ages, and the chamomile kind of sit back on the back end. But when it's fresh, they both are very, very pronounced.
I like your packaging too. Yeah. The labels are cool looking. I like the shiny metallic looking lettering on there.
Yeah.
Very striking. Yeah. It's interesting about the chamomile is that's got to be something that doesn't last too long. It's a pretty delicate flavor, right?
Yeah, definitely. It definitely shows it's more forward when it's fresh than once it hits a few months old, it'll sit back on the back end, and the pineapple will start to show through. So
I know one of you expressed interest in gardening. Does that have a little bit of influence on why there's chamomile in that? Is that like, hey, I got this in the garden, let's rock with that? So yeah, I mean, definitely. I think pretty much all of us here garden it a little bit, but definitely grown chamomile and we just like beverages, so we'll throw it in different types of teas and things like that. So it's just we're constantly playing with things, and it was a combination that we both liked, or all liked, I guess I'd say.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure what to expect with the chamomile in there, but I like it a lot. I enjoy this one, so
it's nice.
Yeah, Adam, question for you, sir. Did we see correctly? Did Upland just celebrate their 20th anniversary?
Yeah, that is correct. 2018 was a big year for us. Originally got started back in 1998. And so 2018, big 20th anniversary. We've had several parties here in town at several of our locations. We've had a bunch of parties in Indianapolis, and invited a bunch of old employees back and had a sort of mini family reunion that was a lot of fun a couple weeks ago. So really just trying to, celebrate what we've done and show everybody what that we're still an innovative brewery. We're still coming out with really fresh, interesting takes on a lot of classic styles, and trying to invent new ones while we're at it.
So if you could, can you give us a little rundown of the history of Upland? Because we don't, we may not know it, and a lot of people listening might not know it also.
Sure. So Bloomington is college town. Indiana University's here. And, the mid to late 90s when craft breweries were starting to pop up, certainly in Indiana, it seemed to center around college towns. So I think we were the second one to open in Bloomington, along with the Bloomington Brewing Company, good friends of ours. And, for a long time, it operated just as a brew pub and just all in one location. We still use that as a pub today, and that's actually the brew house from that brew pub is still the brew house for the sour program. We started the sour program itself in 2006, and the story there is actually a really nice segue into maybe like that oak and rosé you have. We have a really good relationship with a pretty big winery down the road, and they wanted to throw a party for some friends and needed some beer, and we wanted some barrels, so we made a little trade. Our head brewer at the time put the mixed culture in there, and we luckily everybody was patient enough to let it do its thing. So program's been going ever since. In 2012, we sort of saw the need to separate things, and we had really outgrown our old space. So we built a larger production facility out on the west side of Bloomington, where we do all the clean beers today. And then we sort of left the sour program at the original location. Expanded the restaurant a little bit, and in 2016 we were able to basically get some property next to the original location and put up what we call the wood shop, which is essentially our cellar and tasting room for the sour program today. So it's really allowed us to scale things up in a big way. Now we're able to get our beer out in all these different markets that we never were able to get to before, just due to quantity. And it's also allowed us to sort of get much more experimental. So now we've got all sorts of different barrels. We've got many different fooders. We're trying all sorts of new things. We're getting away from just the traditional sort of fruit on sour beer. Now we're playing with these fruit and spice blends that you mentioned, and really just trying to push the envelope in this space. So yeah, opened in 2016, and now we're able to sort of get beer out to people all over the country, like down in Georgia.
Now, I noticed you guys have, I think it's going to be 6 locations total. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe so. Yep.
Had to do the math real quick there, right?
So many.
Yeah, we've got 3 in Bloomington, and then we've got 2 presently up in Indianapolis.
And then you're opening one at what's called Fountain Square in Indy. Is that correct?
Yeah. So Fountain Square is just a little off downtown. Sort of a really neat old neighborhood that's up and coming, and there's already some really great brewers down there, really great restaurants, and we just want to bring what we're doing down here up to downtown Indianapolis in a big way. So that location is going to be really cool. It's going to have really good coffee in the mornings. We're going to have a really great menu, a great patio, and then we're actually going to be brewing in there as well. So this will be the first time we've brewed outside of Bloomington. And so we will be doing a lot of our small experimental sort of clean beers up there, and some barrel-aged clean beers as well.
Okay. So, you've got several tap rooms. That's not common for a lot of breweries. Why did you decide to go that route with the separate tap rooms? I can see what you're talking about with the experimental beers in a couple different brewing locations, but that's a little different.
Sure. I think our brand has always been really locally focused. We've always been, really careful about, helping out the communities we get into and really trying to be a part of communities. So, getting in there and having knowledgeable staff that's able to talk about the beer and share the beer with people versus, some other places where you don't have that one-on-one sort of connection to your customers is really cool. And we also just try to bring what we do down here. We have a cool thing going here in Bloomington, and sort of exporting that to maybe some other neighborhoods around the state is sort of the goal.
You know, one thing I'm a big fan of that I really wish more breweries would get on board with, I saw that your production brewery is actually adults only in the tap room. Is that correct?
Yeah. So
Yes. Are children allowed at the other locations?
there was the food. So some of that is made by Indiana's laws. So, basically, kids aren't allowed in bars up here or tasting rooms. So,
right.
You can bring your dogs, but you can't.
The dogs, that's good. The brewery we're at now has a sign out front that says, well-behaved and least dogs and children are allowed in the tasting room. So, they cover the bases there. You're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We do need to take a quick break, but we'll be back very soon to talk more with Upland Brewing Company.
We are Reformation Brewery, celebrating the reformer in you. Locally crafted within the renowned Etowah watershed of Woodstock, Georgia, Reformation creates yeast-forward brews full of aroma and flavor crafted to last. Come see us in beautiful Woodstock, Georgia, for a tour and tasting of unique brews that you can't find anywhere else. Reformation Brewery, set beer free. ReformationBrewery.com.
It's Brian and Tim, the Beer Guys. If you're like us, no lunch or dinner is complete without a pint or two of craft beer.
Which is why Truck and Tap in downtown Woodstock and Alpharetta are always on our list. Tim, why do they call it Truck and Tap?
Well, the tap part is easy, Brian. They've got 18 of them.
As for the truck part, that's where it gets interesting. Truck and Tap features your favorite Atlanta area food trucks daily, so that way you're getting a different menu every day.
Truck and Tap in downtown Woodstock, Alpharetta, and coming soon to Duluth in 2018. Truckandtap.com. Let them know that the Beer Guys sent you.
Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
The numbers all go to 11.
Does that mean it's louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. I want to give a quick shout out to one of our great radio affiliates, WQEE 99.1 FM in Noonan, Georgia. Catch Beer Guys Radio on 99 Rock the Key every Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern. We're talking to the guys from Upland Brewing this week.
Matt, we would like to talk with you about innovation. So you're the innovation lead for both. Now you do innovation for both the clean side of brewing and the sour side. Is that correct?
I do. I'm not the only guy who does R&D, though. We have a very kind of a democratic process over here where a lot of people get to put their hands into things. But I do kind of the bigger projects like seasonals and developing new techniques like kettle souring or like the new styles like New England IPAs, things we haven't done before. And then collaboration beers, and anytime we're trying to experiment with something on the sour side where we're doing something that's kind of a little out of our normal wheelhouse, then that's the kind of thing that I do.
Well, speaking of kettle souring, that's something we wanted to talk to you about. You won a GABF gold medal for one of your kettle sours, didn't you?
Yeah, two of Tarts. It's a passion fruit and mango gosa.
That sounds really good.
And also, Brian, a World Beer Cup medal for raspberry, correct?
Is that also a kettle sour, or is that just a wild one?
That is one of the mixed fermentation oak age sours. So a different category for that one.
But
another medal.
Yeah, it is another medal. Yeah. You have kind of a rotating scheme with your kettle sours. Is that right?
Yeah, we call it the Tart Series. So it's three beers. The first is Pedal to the Kettle, which is it's a kettle sour beer with rose and hibiscus. We use that on the hot side in our hot back, and then we have strawberry that we add into the fermentation. Two of Tarts comes after that, which is the passion fruit mango gosa, and then a beer called Modern Tart, which is in season right now, and that is kind of a sweet tart beer. We use a little bit of lactose to kind of give it a little bit more body and some residual sweetness to bring out the apricot that we use in that beer, and we dry hop it with Citra and Mosaic hops.
I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of kettle soured beers. I mean, they're drinkable. They do some really good stuff. Like you guys were talking a little bit of lactose, some fruit additions, and that they're a very crushable beer. We're actually releasing one soon.
Oh, we are. Yeah.
They fill a niche that the other sours that we do don't necessarily fill. They're milder. They're just a different kind of beer. So there's that whole crowd of people that try and kind of conflate the two and say that kettle sours are like trying to be like oak age sour beers and mixed fermentation beers, but we think of it as just a different product geared toward a different customer.
It's different, sure.
I definitely agree with you, and I think the neat thing about that is it's going to appeal a lot more to the folks that are more wine drinkers, but they need an entry point into beer, and that's it. I think those kettle sours, especially with the fruit.
Some people are not ready for a hardcore Upland sour in their life just yet. Brian,
that's probably true. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. We just actually little shameless self-promotion here, Brian. We just brewed a collaboration, guys, with a Reformation Brewery here in Woodstock, Georgia, and it's a kettle sour, the first sour kettle sour that the brewery's ever done.
Yep.
And we put yuzu and strawberry in there with it. So it's got kind of a funky strawberry lemonade, and we're doing a can release on November 3rd at the downtown location of Reformation Brewery in Woodstock, Georgia.
Shameless. Shameless. It's called STREWZü. Ask for it by name.
Right. So... Now, along the lines, I think it's kind of similar to a kettle sour. Eli, we would like to talk with you about kombucha some. So you're a kombucha fan, correct?
Yeah, correct. I do like kombucha quite a bit.
That's Brian and I just went. We had a kombucha bar open here in Atlanta area recently, Golden Kombucha, and we went there and we ate vegan cheese and drank kombucha, and it was a good time. Some tasty stuff there. So I imagine there's a lot of people, because kombucha is not as widely accepted or enjoyed, I would guess, as beers, sour beers or otherwise. Can you tell us a little bit about the production process of kombucha?
Yeah, so I mean, kombucha is a fermented tea beverage. So you steep tea with a little bit of sugar, and then there's a culture you use, and you let it ferment out, and it needs oxygen. So it does create some acetic acid in there, which is what vinegar is made out of, which we are just starting to play around with a little bit here. Matt, in particular, has been really deep into that. But I mean, it's one of those where it's just a nice, refreshing beverage that's not an alcoholic beverage that we're trying to play around with and figure out. And it's actually what got me started in sour beer. I was drinking kombucha before I drank sour beer. Then my first sour beer was actually Upland's Blackberry Sour. And I was like, oh, wow, this tastes a lot like a fruited kombucha. And it's kind of what got me into the whole sour realm.
So what size batches are you guys doing?
5 gallons, baby. 5 gallons at a time. We've just started dipping our toe into it, but we're actually scaling up this upcoming month we're going to be doing some barrels of it. So we're going to start with some barrel fermented.
I was wondering. So I've done 1 gallon batches at home, and you've got the SCOBY there that you use. And is it the same with a 5 gallon or a larger commercial batch? Do you have a massive SCOBY you gotta keep alive there? Okay. All right. I wondered if that was the case. I guess it would make sense because that's the way you do kombucha.
Is it more of a challenge because, well, I guess I need to ask if you're doing anything to pasteurize it. I mean, I assume you're leaving the bacteria in there for the probiotic effects, but I don't know actually. What are you guys doing with that?
That's the hard part, is you don't want to pasteurize it because a lot of people drink it for at least the perceived health benefits of the probiotics. So then you have this issue, well, how do you keep it from fermenting a little bit more down the line and maybe gaining a little bit more alcohol? So it's a complicated fermentation because you have yeast in there that produces the ethanol, and then the acetobacter, the acetic acid bacteria, will convert that into acetic acid. And so the initial fermentation happens and the alcohol is produced, and then it comes back down after the bacteria take over. But then if you limit the oxygen, the acetobacter can't convert that ethanol. So if there's more fermentation that happens in package, then the ethanol stays in there.
Yeah, I'd read about the challenges of that really hitting the mainstream in a big way. To do it, you have to pasteurize it to keep things from blowing up or from it becoming an alcoholic beverage. But the problem is, you pasteurize it, then you've lost the probiotic effect. So it's just a matter of you have to enjoy the flavor of it at that point.
And there's some people.
Well,
sorry, go right.
There's a couple different ways that the kombucha industry is handling it, and one is if you pasteurize it and then you put back probiotics that aren't going to create alcohol, like you put back just lactobacillus in there. So some of the larger kombucha breweries are doing that, and that's a little bit controversial. But the way that most of the smaller kombucha companies do it is they'll just control the supply chain so that everything stays cold, and that they have very strict expiration dates that they have to adhere to. So, if you have the consistency that you need and you've done the shelf life testing, you can determine, well, okay, if this is cold for this long, it's still going to remain under that 0.5% alcohol that you can call it non-alcoholic, at which point it has to then be taken off the shelf. So they have to make sure, most kombucha breweries have to make sure that after the product leaves the brewery, that it's cold the entire way until it gets to the customer.
Which is so hard to do because we've seen that a lot with like the Northeast IPAs and these big fruited beers. So much controversy going around out there about, the secondary fermentation that could take place. And we've read the article recently that said the heavy hopping in those beers could actually contribute to secondary fermentation.
Yeah, they could add enzymes.
Yep, the enzymes will break down some of the longer chain sugars into stuff that the yeast can eat, so the yeast will do it.
And people will run out to their favorite growler shop and get a crowler of a big super fruited beer and then leave it in their car and get a grenade going there. So
a fruit grenade, baby.
Fruit grenade. I mean, in concept, it sounds good. In practice,
is that a beer name? Fruit grenade?
You guys can use that one. You guys can take that
one's on us.
Yes.
That's the hardest part about brewing beer is coming up.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
There is an issue. I just saw it this week in Britain. They're running into a real problem. There's a lot of intellectual property lawsuits,
trademark issues, right?
Because of beer names. There's shortages of beer names.
Well, that's that brewery. Nowhere in particular took care of that by everything is. Nowhere in particular number 0028 0029. So you're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We do need to take a break, but we'll be back very soon to talk more with Upland Brewing Company.
Craft beer forged with a reverence for tradition and new styles that start a revolution. Ironmonger Brewing. The brewers at Ironmonger Brewing pride themselves at being masters of barrel-aged, hoppy, and sour beers. They invite you to their tap room in Marietta, Georgia to taste and see. Also visit their barrel room for an intimate drinking experience with great live entertainment. Keep up to date on all things Ironmonger by liking them on Facebook. Ironmonger Brewing, establishing a new standard in craft beer.
Are you thinking about opening a brewery in the Atlanta area? If so, take a look at the Park at Georgetown. This unique community will feature a collection of restaurants, as well as a craft brewery within the new J.W. Holmes luxury development, Dunwoody Green. Conveniently located less than half a mile from I-285, this enclave of restaurants will be the gathering place in Dunwoody. Krim & Associates, the developer of the Park at Georgetown, wants to talk to you. For more information, call Todd Semrau at 404-226-6526.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
To be the man, you gotta beat the man. Woo!
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/beerguys. Patrons can get early show access, Beer Guys swag, and other cool perks. We're broadcasting from the Beer Guys Radio Studios in Marietta, Georgia, and we're talking with Eli, Matt, and Adam from Upland Brewing today.
Upland Brewing Company in Indiana, Brian.
Indiana.
How about it? Adam, I have a question for you, sir. I saw that you actually set up a sensory training program for Upland. Is that correct?
So a couple of years ago, I was fortunate enough to go up to Chicago, where Cicerone is based, and took part in a ROXA training course to basically train myself and then learn how to train others on developing, their sensory skills a lot better. So since then, I've brought it back to the brewery. We've done a lot of training with the brewery staff. That involves dosing beers with various flavor standards, talking about basically the flavor profiles of different beers we make. And then the really cool thing is recently, over the past year, we've taken that program and created a version of it that we're using to train lots of our retail staff. So as we mentioned, we have 6 different locations. That's a lot of people serving beers to customers, and being able to take this training basically develop a shared vocabulary of flavors and knowledge that we can then use to talk to ourselves better, and also then communicate those things to the customers, I think is really important.
Now, you mentioned that you're training some of your retail partners on this. How is the craft beer scene in that area? How do you have several bars, or do you have bars that are really dedicated and know the scene, or is it a good amount of work kind of getting everybody to know this side of it?
So far, we've just done it in our own retail locations. So basically, Upland employees.
I see. Okay.
But, as we said, there's 5 right now, going to be 6. So that ends up being quite a few people.
Now, do you think that's something that, your fans would benefit from? Like, is that something you're thinking about possibly offering as a service to people who are into your beer?
We've actually talked about it recently. We have, in our summer program, we have what's called the Secret Barrel Society, which actually the signups for 2019 will be coming up real soon. If you're interested, you can check out our website, uplandbeer.com. But that's something we've actually discussed with sort of taking to the SBS members is do some actually sensory training and maybe some, other fun hands-on, hang out with the brewery type things.
Sure. The interesting thing about those, and I've done them before, is there are certain compounds you just can't taste. Like certain people are blind to them. Have you noticed that with any particular ones? Are there ones that people on average are more blind to in terms of aroma and flavor?
Yeah, certainly. I think compounds maybe like DMS are hard for a lot of people. Some people it really pops out for, others really seem to struggle. There's like 5 or 6 compounds that all can be described as apple. And so once you get into the level that like you're really differentiating the nuances of, like a golden apple or like a baked apple, it gets tricky certainly for people to pick out the different compounds and really differentiate.
And, that's one of those things that if someone hears you talking about those flavors and compounds, that's not necessarily a beer person or a wine person. If you say, I get notes of apple in this, right, and then someone's like, well, is it baked apple or non-baked apple? Is it green or red apple? Is it that? They're like, these beer geeks, they're just making stuff up here. So
I found that it especially on things like Untapped, if you start throwing around acetaldehyde and diacetyl and things like that, and DMS, brewers, when you talk to them, they look at that stuff and they shake their head. Now it might be accurate, but they're kind of, you get a little of that, a little pushback from the brewers too.
DMS is one of my favorite rappers. I love everything he does. DMS. Yeah.
Brew or die, Tim.
brew or die. Well, guys, we want to talk we've talked a lot about the sours and a little brush on kind of your clean beers here, but there's a couple, especially the clean beers, that we really want to talk about. You mentioned that you do, I guess as all the cool kids are doing right now, you do brew Northeast IPAs, correct?
Yeah, we got into that with our Side Trail series. So the Side Trail series is started as like a one-off kind of a thing. So we just brew a beer, never brew it again, brew another beer, never brew it again. And then it evolved into kind of an IPA series where we're doing these juicy IPAs because we wanted to keep the quantity limited because we wanted it to go fast so it would stay fresh, essentially. So we brewed this beer called Juiced in Time, which is about 6.5% juicy IPA with Citra, Eldorado, and Galaxy. And that was kind of our flagship juicy beer. And then we've had a series of 4 other ones since then. The Imperial is coming out. We're packaging it next week, actually, or later this week. And we just play around with different hops and different combinations of other flavors with that. The Juiced in Time is one that comes back kind of every other time. So we'll brew Juiced in Time, then the next beer, Juiced in Time again, and then the next beer. And that one finds its way out into some outside markets as well.
Guys, I want to interject here because we're sipping on your cherry right now. And I just want to say the cherry in this is some of the cherriest cherry that I've had in a
It doesn't suck.
Beer. It does not suck. That's I'm going to put that in my review on there. It does not suck.
There's a good deal of cherry in this cherry.
There is a good deal of cherry in this. So I just want to say I really like this because a lot of times in sours, especially creeks and that, you kind of look for the sour cherry notes in there. They're not as prominent, but this one big juicy cherry in this. It's
and
very
the aroma
tasty.
is really cherry too. So back to the clean beers. I got to ask about what I believe is your third most popular beer on Untapped. It's a Pilsner named Champagne Velvet. I got to know more about this. I read the description and it sounds intriguing.
Well, yeah, this is a beer we acquired the name to with the brand of in 2013. It was originally brewed in 1902 at Terre Haute Brewing Company in Terre Haute, Indiana. So it was a pre-Prohibition Pilsner. So German brewers were immigrating over here and they were trying to recreate the German Pilsner. But the trouble is that all the malt over here was 6-row and it had a lot of protein. So they had to cut that protein with corn in order to get a clear beer. They'd have all these hazy beers with the protein. So this beer is 30% corn, which is trying to recreate the original recipe. And we brought this beer out in 2013, put a lot of effort behind it, and it kind of, it did well. But then now this whole trend of like the retro Pilsner has kind of come to life, and it fits in that niche. And we are churning out a lot more of that than we did just a couple years ago, for sure. And that's one of the ones that makes it out into outside markets. People in Boston, for some reason, love it so much more that we just got a CV truck, Champagne Velvet truck out in Boston because they're buying some.
Really? Okay.
They know what they like.
Them hipsters and their pre-Prohibition beers.
There's a lot of cool old branding that goes along with it too. So the artwork that we use is almost exclusively retro artwork, and it's really pretty cool.
Well, I found it surprising. That's like Brian mentioned it. If you look on Untapped and sort your beers by popularity, it's the third most popular, which with the popularity of Northeast IPAs and sours and all that, I thought it's interesting. But I guess with the tap rooms, you have a lot of people that come to a tap room are probably attracted to beers like that. But either way, it's still interesting that for a craft brewery with so many other offerings, that a Pilsner is third most popular.
Yeah, it's just a kind of a go-to beer. Even for brewers,
Yes.
We're not looking, especially, it's a drinking beer.
It's a drinking beer.
You can only drink so many Imperial New England IPAs in a sitting, and you got to switch to Pilsner.
Are you using the 6-row malt in that to replicate the recipe, or are you using?
We're using Breeze 2-row,
more modern. You're not.
The corn comes from Breeze as well.
Okay. I think we need to talk a little bit about Teddy Bear Kisses, the variants. You've got an event coming up for that, don't you?
Yeah, October 30th at the Wood Shop, which is our sour facility. We're having all the variants on tap. I think we also might have some vintages. Yeah, and then the variants this year are orange, coconut, and there's a s'more variant with cinnamon and extra chocolate.
I want a little bit of each of those in a glass, I think.
A suicide.
Teddy
Bear Kisses suicide.
Teddy Bear Cuvée.
That could be a special.
See, right? Absolutely. Very good stuff. Yeah. Guys, well, thanks so much for joining this week. If people want to find out more about what is happening with Upland Brewing Company, what is the best way for them to do that?
Uplandbeer.com is sort of our gateway. From there, you can get to our Facebook, our Instagram, all the social media stuff. You can join our email list, and you'll get all the news that way. Or just come check us out at one of our locations.
Excellent. Thanks again, guys. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
That about wraps it up for this episode of the Beer Guys Radio Show. Coming up next week, we're going to be talking with Nashville's Yazoo Brewing Company. For more craft beer info, make sure to follow us online. We're Beer Guys Radio on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And make sure you never miss an episode. Subscribe to Beer Guys Radio on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Overcast, or your favorite podcasting app. Thanks again for tuning in. Have a great week. And don't forget to drink local. Cheers.
The Beer Guys Radio Show on the Beer Guys Radio Network. BeerGuysRadio.com.